An author has told the wonderful story of an old sea captain named Eleazar Hull. The author writes, early in the 19th century, in the days when the great fleets of sailing ships would set out from New Bedford to scour the oceans of the world for whale oil, the most famous skipper of them all was Eleazar Hull. Captain Hull took his vessel into more remote seas, brought home greater quantities of oil, and lost fewer crewmen in the process than any other master of his time. And all this was the more remarkable because he had no formal navigational training of any kind. When asked how he guided his ship infallibly over the desert of waters, he would reply, well, I go up on deck, listen to the wind in the rigging, get the drift of the sea, and take a long look at the stars. Then I set my course. One day, however, the march of time caught up with this ancient mariner. The insurance company, whose agents covered the vessels of Captain Hull's employers, declared that they would no longer write a policy for any ship whose master did not meet formal standards of education in the science of navigation. Now, Captain Hull's superiors could well understand this new rule, but they were at a loss to know how to approach this proud man whose life had been spent on the bridge and tell him that either he must go back to school or retire. Well, after some consultation, they decided to just meet the problem head on. 3 of the company's top executives waited on Captain Hull and put their dilemma as tactfully as possible. To their amazement, the old man responded enthusiastically. He had, it appeared, always wanted to know something about science, and he was entirely willing to spend several months studying it. So the arrangements were made. Eleazar Hull went to school, studied hard, and graduated near the top of his class. Then he returned to his ship, set out to sea, and was gone for 2 years. When the skipper's friends heard that he was finally putting into Portugal, they met him in an informal delegation at the docks. They inquired eagerly how it felt to navigate by the book after so many years of doing it the other way. It was wonderful, Captain Hull responded. Whenever I wanted to know my position, I'd go to my cabin, get out all the charts, work through the proper equations, and set my course with mathematical precision. Then I'd go up on deck, get the drift of the sea, listen to the wind in the rigging, and take a long look at the stars, and correct my computations for error. And perhaps Captain Hull can teach us something about our culture and why it is people so often feel so very lost. Something about why it is people can't seem to find what they're after. Of course, what people are after is not whale oil. Maybe what they're after is success, recognition, appreciation, or maybe meaning and purpose, or peace of mind, peace down deep inside, or maybe it's joy or hope, or maybe it's God that they're after, or in a word, something that will satisfy, so that what is missing will no longer be missing. And you would think that people would be getting closer to finding what they're after. After all, there is so much information and knowledge at our fingertips. There's so many books on spirituality and personal growth. There are such better insights into the psychology of the self. There are so many programs to follow, so many seminars and gatherings to attend, so many answers that are offered. But are people any closer? Or do they still find themselves in the same old place, feel like they're somehow off course and drifting, still lost, still far from that peace or the self they want to be, far from God? Why don't all the programs or information or knowledge or answers get people any closer? What's lacking? Well, perhaps what is lacking is the very thing Captain Hull possessed: wisdom. And by wisdom, I mean that sense of life and insight into life that comes out of long experience and oftentimes difficult things. That understanding that comes not simply from the mind, but from the heart as well. That intuition, that ability to see beneath and beyond what is happening and see what is really happening and why. The ability to see life in the world as a whole and make some sense of it. See where it's all leading and what can be done. Captain Hall took in all the data and information at his disposal, availed himself of the latest science, was open to the latest technology, but then he tested it against the wisdom he had gained from years at sea, his deep sense of the wind and water and stars, his own heart, and profound understanding. Then he corrected his course, set his course. And maybe that's what's lacking today: wisdom. One commentator has actually said we are in the midst of a wisdom famine these days. We're bombarded day after day with information, data, facts, knowledge. And frankly, most of it just overwhelms most of us, even numbs us. We just don't know what to do with it all. And the strange thing is, it seems to bring us no closer to an understanding of ourselves or life or God. And one reason may be, the commentator writes, is that many people really don't want to be wise anymore. Many people want to be right, or powerful, or rich, or popular, or in control, or probably all of the above, but not wise. And so we have a wisdom famine in which the shallow and the loud is what we mostly get. And yet there are those who hunger for wisdom, I think. Some years back, a little book was published that took the publishing world by surprise. It shot to the top of the bestseller list, sold millions of copies, went through countless printing. And what was so surprising was that the book chronicled the conversations of a dying man with a former student. And it was filled with insights about the world and living and loving and dying and forgiving. And the fact that so many people bought it, even continue to buy it to this day, suggests that the wisdom famine we've been experiencing for years, there are those still starving for insight, want deeper understanding, who hunger for more than what popular culture offers. They need something more if they're truly going to set a course. But how do you do that? How do we do it? Gain wisdom enough to know the direction to take to find some peace and joy, come closer to God. Well, that reading from Proverbs today offers a clue or two. The reading portrays wisdom as a human figure who invites passers-by to come into a feast. Now, there's one thing about a feast. It can last a long, long time. And that should tell us that when it comes to gaining wisdom, we're not talking about McDonald's. We're not talking about eating on the run. We're talking about a number of courses, taking time to savor each course, talking with other guests, digesting what is taken in before moving on to the next serving, staying at the table. That's how wisdom is gained. It's gained over time, with patience, with thought, with conversation, many courses, no quick answers, no fast food. And there's something else the reading from Proverbs tells us. One thing that is so striking about the reading is that wisdom is portrayed as a woman. In the male-oriented, male-dominated Old Testament, that's striking. But why a woman? Another commentator said, and by the way, a man is because wisdom has to do with a woman's imagination, a woman's eye, a woman's intuition and heart. Moreover, he writes, wisdom is born out of suffering as a woman bears a child. It shows a way through the darkness like a woman standing at the window holding a lamp. Wisdom comes from knowing our hearts and the hearts of others, talking and listening to joys and hurts, paying attention to our heart and mind. Wisdom is a woman who sees with more than her eyes and listens with more than her ears. But where do we start then in the gaining of wisdom? Well, you might try curling up with a good book. Trust me, there's a lot of bad books out there, filled with nonsense, shallow thinking, faddish notions. Keep looking until you come across a good one. Not necessarily one of the self-help books. It could be a novel, maybe, biography, something that speaks to you. Talk to friends, ask for recommendations, page through a few books, read some reviews. And when you do find a good one, take the time to sit down with it and treat it as if you are at a great feast. Take the author's thoughts in slowly, savor them, digest them. In the book I mentioned earlier, the author has some thoughts about forgiveness we could all do well to spend a little time with. He says, forgive yourself before you die, then forgive others. So much of our lack of peace, in truth, our turmoil, our bitterness that eats away at us lies right there. Not only in our refusal to forgive others, but our refusal to forgive ourselves. We hold on so tightly to hurts and memories, disappointments and failures. Wisdom teaches us to let go and allow God and God's forgiveness to set ourselves and others free. It's the path to peace. Or try Proverbs, Psalms, Job, Ecclesiastes, or one of the Gospels. But read them. Listen to your heart and mind. Allow them to read you and give you insight. And the other thing is, we need to take time to listen to our own lives. Through all that has happened and not happened, through the events of each day, the great joys and deep sorrows, and the happiness and sadness and silences, God speaks. But we must learn to pay attention. Remember, talk with ourselves and God about some things. Often what we need, the answers we seek, the way we should go is spelled out, right there, in what happens. Written out in our hearts, what fills us with joy. But often we're so busy or running so hard or so afraid that we don't even see it. And God is there too. There's such much of God's grace that is there, getting us from one day to the next, seeing us through. So listen to your life. Talk with yourself about it, and God too. Even learn to live without answers for a time. Allow the answers to come. You know, someone said when we're young, we think of how we want to live. That's youth. How we want to live. But yet, when we're older, we often think of how we would like to have lived. And often, how we like to have lived is the opposite of what we once thought we would like to live. Pay attention to such thoughts. As we get older, is to discover some wisdom for the remainder of our days. Teach us much about peace or joy, being the self we so want to be, the course we need to be on. And talk with friends. Talk about life, what really matters. Just for a moment, if it is possible, forget politics, forget the stock market, or the latest tittle-tattle, and consider what really matters. A psychiatrist who spent years helping deeply disturbed patients find some measure of life has written that what his patients taught him was this: work, play, friendship, love. These are the things that matter. It is the simplest things we have forgotten. And have we forgotten? Wisdom teaches us that for all our success, our money, our possessions, our accomplishments, it's the simplest of things that bring peace, fulfillment, joy. Work, play, friendship, love. Old Captain Eleazar Hall would study his charts, work on his equations, but always then go up on deck, get the drift of the sea, listen to the wind in the rigging, take a long look at the stars, and then correct his computations for error and set his true course. And that's finally how we do reach the destination. Yes, take in the information and knowledge, but then get the drift of our life. Listen to our hearts, to what God is saying in and through it all, and take a long look at ourselves and the love of God in Christ. Then correct our computations for error, and with wisdom set our true course.